Good evening, Des Moines, Iowa. Welcome to webcast1live.com. This is the Doc and Lefty program. I am your lovable liberal Lefty, and across the table from me is my friend, compatriot, partner in crime, and co-host, the good Dr. Doc. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I will tell you, it is hot.
It's
really hot.
It's a warm one.
Oh, yeah, and the humidity.
Yep.
Humidity is terrible out there.
You know what they say?
My hair get all flat and icky. Usually it's beautiful.
It's not the heat. It's a cliche. But we're coming to you live from the Webcast One Live studios in the beautiful, air-conditioned, and always lovely Des Moines Metro Skywalk in the downtown area. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. We've got a lot because there's a lot going on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, before we get into the agenda that we had set kind of for today, I wanted to mention a couple of things. There are one pretty miraculous given the circumstances, and one tragedy that's still developing. Mass transit tragedies. One in San Francisco with the Asiana flight that only, and I don't want to diminish this by saying only, but 2 fatalities reported. Tragically, 2 young women from China who were traveling through across the United States, and they lost their lives. But nobody else on that flight was killed. Hardly anybody else was injured, and so it's a minor miracle there. But still, our hearts go out to the families of those 2 young women. But the developing tragedy in Lac-Mégantic, Canada. The train, if you heard about this, the train derailed and basically went on a bender through downtown Lac-Mégantic, destroyed this really quaint tourist area up there. They have the last reporting that I saw from the BBC, 13 people confirmed killed,
oh my goodness.
Over 50 still missing. So this is a developing thing, just an awful, awful tragedy. I mean, the Prime Minister of Canada was on the radio earlier this morning talking about at least 30 buildings just torched and incinerated, flattened to the ground, like a giant had come in and scooped them away. So our thoughts go out to those families who are dealing with that tragedy, and just if you're interested at all in sort of the world affairs that are going on, just kind of keep your browser on refresh, because that story is going to be with us for a couple weeks at least.
Yeah.
But we're talking today, at least to begin, about the new developments in Egypt. And if you've been following this story, it developed very just rapid light speed we know we have a 24-hour news cycle now, and things kind of come and go pretty quickly, but Egypt went from sort of the surprise and the pride and the absolute jubilation of the first democratically elected president in Egypt's entire history. It had never happened. Mohamed Morsi was the first one to take power with a majority. All outside and independent election observers called this a clean and fair election as things are considered. And he took power and then proceeded to make misstep after misstep. Declared himself above judicial review back in November, declared his edicts couldn't be challenged by anybody and couldn't be put up to referendum. And then here we are a year later, and Morsi's out. There's rioting in the streets. This stuff looks like it's about to turn into a full-scale civil war between the revolutionaries who never, I guess, got the memo that the revolutionary was over and they won, and the Morsi supporters who, if you look at it on the surface, you would call them the supporters of democracy, to tell you the truth. And so I'm going to ask my colleague here to weigh in. Doc, a coup is a coup is a coup. If it smells like a coup, it walks like a coup,
and shoots like a coup,
it's a coup, right? What's your take on it?
Well, that's what I think it is. I disagree a little bit with a couple of things. First of all, there was some international observers had questioned some of the results and some of the shenanigans that went on just before the final count and the election. It wasn't contested necessarily, but there were things going on that they said, listen, this shouldn't be happening in a democracy. That would be the only point I'd bring up. But he was democratically elected. Everybody knew he was part of the Muslim Brotherhood, a party that was outlawed. Now, here in the U.S., we generally don't get into outlawing parties. It's pretty rare. We don't even outlaw the KKK for crying out loud.
Well, I don't believe the KKK doesn't have a political arm, and so that
and that's true. That's not really, but we don't ban political parties. It's foreign to us,
right?
And so over there, they ban things people don't like all the time. While we're in power, we don't want it. The issue really comes down to 3 months ago, the Egyptian military started warning Morsi, listen, this isn't what we signed up for. This isn't what we want. And historically, the Egyptian military is about the only one that looks out for the welfare of Egypt before everything else, and then looks out for the people of Egypt.
Well, I mean, there are two takeaways here that I would notice, or at least that's been reported on, and that just my following of the story that I think is sort of interesting. One, Morsi wasn't just democratically elected. The Muslim Brotherhood won 3 key democratic provisions, 3 democratic elections.
Yes,
I mean,
that's true.
Mohamed Morsi won the election. And you can say that, yes, he barely won or whatever, but it was a majority of the votes were cast for him. That the revolutionaries the other opposition candidate was someone from Mubarak's old regime. And so the Tahrir Square revolutionaries they held their nose and voted for Morsi, even though they didn't really want an Islamist Muslim Brotherhood guy in the office. But then the Muslim Brotherhood won a majority in parliament.
Yep.
Won a clear large chunk of seats in the parliament and reaffirmed that election. 3,
I agree.
They set up the Constitution, and the Muslim Brotherhood got a constitution that was very, very Islamic, that was the hallmark of political Islam, set up Egypt as an Islamic state, did all these different things that outside observers sort of said, oh man, okay, so we didn't really think that was a good idea. But still, that in a popular referendum, that constitution was submitted to the people, and it passed with like 65% of the vote. So
right.
The Muslim Brotherhood, the clear Islamic party of Egypt, who's made no bones about its platform for years and years and years since they renounced violence and became a viable political party, won 3 times. And here we have then in about a year, 52% of the people being dissatisfied with President Morsi, and the military saying, all right, you know what, Muslim Brotherhood, you know what, political Islam, we're not going to let you get away with this stuff, even though you've been democratically elected 3 times now. Right
after the break, we're going to come back. We're going to continue to talk about Egypt and how it spiraled out of control and has taken a lot of, America's limited credibility in the Islamic world right down the toilet with it. Well, you're listening to Doc and Lefty here on webcast1live.com. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. We'll be back right after the break.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittysusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're discussing sort of Egypt. Right before the break, I set up sort of the Gordian knot that Egypt presents by having 3 sort of democratic, not necessarily 3 democratic elections, 3 votes that reaffirmed the rule of the Muslim Brotherhood, and then the army steps in and says, you know what, we don't like how this is going. We're going to take you out. We're going to transfer power back to whoever. They haven't nominated anybody as far as the last I've heard.
They have an interim president
Yes.
And I don't know. They did appoint him and say, well, you're going to run it for now. And we're going to set up another Democratic election down the road. So that's essentially where it stands now.
And the problem is, what is to tell the next leader of Egypt that if he doesn't do what the military thinks is best, that they won't do the same thing again?
Well, but again, we go back to the Egyptian military has always been the ones that have ruled, and they give up power until things start to get unstable. They really don't care what bent you are. They care that the country is stable. They're the ones that it wasn't Hosni Mubarak that got assassinated. Who got assassinated? Anwar Sadat.
Yes.
And they were the ones that kept it stable in the transition. Part of the thing you have to remember is under Mubarak, people could eat, people had electricity, people had coal. You know, the oil made it to where it's supposed to go. You know, things ran smoothly.
Unless you were a dissenter.
Unless you were a dissenter. Now, the problem is when you finally accumulated enough dissenters in Egypt, the military steps in and says, all right, we're going to have an orderly transition of power, which is basically what they guarantee. And you hit it on the head. When they start taking away rights from people that elected Morsi, I mean, he said, well, the Constitution, women can't vote anymore. This is typical for Islamists. You know, they come in, they start restricting what the rights that you have. At some point, the military said, well, hold on, we're having unrest in the streets. Things are unstable. And twice as many people who voted for you are now petitioning for you to get out. That gives us, you know, the right to step in. That's how they feel about it. About 3 months ago, they started sending signals, you're going to have to reverse course on this. He stood strong. His supporters stood in the street and says, well, the military will have to kill all of us to get through. And the military said, you know, we can do that. We've done it before. And we've had some clashes. But really, keep in mind, these people are starving. These people don't have energy. They have their electricity cut off at night.
Well, here's I guess the next question I'd ask you then about the military's role in this, because clearly, I mean, the military was they were the kind of the darlings of the first revolution because they came in, they took the old man out and they transferred power relatively quickly. And everybody, you know, it was sort of like really thought the military was okay, except they had draconian policies and like backfilled for themselves and sort of like consolidated their own power and so on and so forth. But what does it say to why would not the Muslim Brotherhood and the people who support the Muslim Brotherhood, who theoretically was a majority just over a year ago, what is to prevent them then from throwing their hands up, going back to their old school intellectual and spiritual roots, which was as an armed resistance group? That's how they formed. And to say, you know what, we can't get anywhere in the democratic process because every time we try, if the military doesn't like what we do, they just kick our guys out and throw us to the streets. And as I'm reporting as of today, kill 50 people in the street unprovoked. At least that's what the people have been able to kind of determine so far. Then why is the Muslim Brotherhood, what gives them any sort of incentive to try and rectify this peacefully?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Let's look at this. Now, one of the sayings that one of my relatives has told me who was in the military is violence doesn't solve anything, it solves everything. Here's the truth of the matter. The Muslim Brotherhood couldn't get anywhere using violence. It just couldn't. Look at the political clout they have now. Even if somebody else is elected, they still have a giant voting block. You're still going to have to deal with them. So why marginalize yourself after you've attained what you've wanted?
But they got it taken away. That's my whole point.
But not just Morsi's been removed. The entire government has been removed.
The entire government's been completely dissolved, though.
Well, but
they don't have a functioning government anymore.
I get that, but these people are still going to be it's like our local elections. You know, there are people that get elected, like locally. You know, Brad Zahn is very conservative. He's out in Urbandale, and Urbandale's not that much of a conservative town. But here's Brad, who's out there saying, hey, listen, I'm representing you. These are my beliefs. Even if you don't agree with Brad, you're still going to go, well, I'll elect him. I know him. He's my buddy. This is what the Muslim Brotherhood has accomplished. Hey, we're your friends, really. And the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood has not come out and strongly said, hey, listen, we want Morsi in, tells me a lot about maybe he overstepped his boundaries. Maybe he's alienated people.
Well, that's what the whole thing is about. I mean, the head of the Al Noor party pulled out of talks. The Muslim Brotherhood's in the streets rioting right now. And this is my take on it, because I don't like theocratic regimes any more than the next guy. And you heard me rail against that all the time.
Yes.
And I certainly don't like totalitarians. And so one of the interesting defenses that you hear from the Egyptian military is they said this. About 3 months ago, like you said, they went to Morsi and said, hey, you've got, like, people are really starting to come out against you. We've gotten a lot of people, there's starting to be some, a little bit of unrest in the street. People aren't happy. Tell you what, if you can't change things now, in a few months, why don't you set up a public referendum and say, let the people vote on whether or not they can get rid of you? Because the Egyptian Constitution had no mechanism the way that we do in the United States for impeachment, for any kind of recall election, for any sort of kind of like anti-democratic, and I mean that in a fairly positive term, where they're saying, hey, look, we messed up, we made a mistake, the majority kind of screwed up, let's put it to a vote again. And Morsi said, no, I've got 5 years to do this, you guys, and you're going to have to, or 4 years, whatever the election term is, and you're just going to have to wait and vote me out then. And the military said, nah, I don't think you know how this works. And so their defense is his obstinance is what has caused all of these problems. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree 100% with that assessment. I mean, one of the things you have to remember about Islamists is this is their belief. One man, one vote, one time. You know, you vote for the guy who's going to be set up a theocracy, and then that's the way it goes. That's what they typically do. That's why I say the military has always been the repository of the health of the Egyptian people. I understand that they come in, they roughhouse, they shoot people in the streets. None of that's good. But you also have to keep in mind that their bigger concern is, how do we keep Egypt as stable as we can? When you have people out there beginning to riot, you can't help that. The other thing is when you eliminate 1/2 of all the voters, females in your constitution, that's not going to be able to stand for very long, especially in a nation that's been secularized as long as this has been. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit, just a quick break, talk about some of our sponsors. Polk County GOP, they continue to sponsor us. They have the Bill Northey picnic coming up this weekend. I believe it's July 13th at 4:30. It's out at the fairgrounds. So that'll be a good time out there. It's always a good feed. And who puts on a better feed than a farmer, right? Right, Blake?
That's right.
Absolutely. And then, of course, Des Moines Anesthesia, and they are, Des Moines Anesthesia are experts in pain management. They're available. Just give them a call. Their number is 244-3700. They have offices here in Des Moines and in Fort Dodge. We want to thank those sponsors for sponsoring our show, obviously. Back to Egypt.
And I wanted to jump in here and make one quick correction. That was the voting rights of women were maintained in the Constitution. That was one of the things that was up for debate that they couldn't get that they discussed when they were negotiating it. But the rights of women to vote in Egypt has been preserved this entire time. And so I just wanted to. We were representing that women couldn't vote in Egypt. That's not true. But there have been issues with voter intimidation and voter suppression all throughout the country, as happens in a lot of different localities around the world.
You bet. Now, keep in mind that Egypt is a country of right around 86 million people. And 22 million of them signed this petition to remove Morsi. And that's really kind of what made the military step in, because they were looking at a civil war is what they were looking at. Now, don't get me wrong, rioting in the streets is bad news, but the bottom line is it's not a civil war at this point. They're going to have democratically held elections again. My issue is with President Obama's very quick, support of the Muslim Brotherhood in Morsi. He could have, in my opinion.
What are you talking about? He didn't say anything.
Yeah, he did.
No, he didn't.
When he first got elected,
Well, back then, he praised the Democratic election.
He praised Morsi and everything else. And what I'm saying is, instead of coming out and saying, hey, we're glad the Muslim Brotherhood was elected and everything else, he really should have said, we're happy that the democratic process worked in Egypt and we're willing to work with the people. The problem with sending aid overseas like we do is when you have this situation occur, there's nothing but bad that's going to happen for America. If we go, yeah, Morsi, this isn't what democracy is about, and you need to step aside, they're not supporting democratically elected people. And if we go, well, hold on, he was democratically elected and we don't think the military should overthrow him, then we're supporting a despot. And particularly since we're still sending, I think it's $2 billion in aid. I can't remember the exact number.
Well, remember what that aid was from. That aid was the sweetener to keep Egypt out of Israel.
That's true.
In the Camp David Accords, we've been sending military hardware and training to Egypt since the 70s. When we got that peace treaty signed, they said, "Yeah, we'll stop attacking Israel as long as you guys start sending us some money." So it was a ransom payment. But this is I don't know how you can really criticize what Obama's done here. I mean, on the one hand, you want us to be going around supporting American values. And first of all, the Muslim Brotherhood won a clear majority. They elected a president who was from the Muslim Brotherhood party by a majority, and then ratified the Constitution by a majority that was heavily influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood's proposals for the Constitution. So the president comes out and says, "Boy, yeah, we're the bastion of democracy, hope and freedom in this world, and Egypt, we just don't like the guy that you elected, so we're not going to be okay with it." I think that a U.S. president coming out and saying we have grave concerns about a military removing a democratically elected president, no matter who it is that is more consistent with American values. And to call Morsi a despot after a year in office when he really hasn't done anything despotic whatsoever, except kind of promote a lot of the things that a lot of the universal human right violations of the universal human rights that women and other liberals have a problem with since he was elected and didn't vote for him in the first place. I just don't see how the president could have walked this really fine line any better than he did. I mean, either way you slice it, American credibility in this situation is shot because we're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, and I agree, because it doesn't matter what you do. From my perspective, and I know Lefty has a different one, President Obama really jumped really quick on I support the Muslim Brotherhood. They're good guys, whatever he said, right? I'm looking that up right now. In fact, it's the CanadaFreePress.com is the article I was looking at. That's my opinion on this. We shouldn't, I will tell you, I'm going to take the libertarian stance. We shouldn't be sending billions of dollars to these people in support of a ransom, basically. I think we need to start cutting back on our aid, because we talked last week about Power Africa. My view is, the more we send money in tanks and arms to these third world countries, the more likely it is we're going to have somebody that can consolidate all that aid into one massive fighting force. And now you're dealing with a despot again. We've done it over and over, and I think we need to start withdrawing our aid. I don't mind sending him, corn and wheat and, things that will help feed the people and medicine. But I think it's time to stop sending guns and weapons overseas. And we'll talk about that the next segment about the giant UN gun grab. But the bottom line is I understand that we have a corporate business here that, thrives on arming people to shoot each other. I get that. The problem is in America, we've grown up with guns. We understand what guns are and what guns do, and we understand the responsibility of it. And it's fairly rare you get a crackpot loose with a gun. The problem is when your only ability is not political, but violence, arming these people isn't going to help you. It isn't going to help you in the long run.
you know my position on this kind of stuff, and
yes,
I don't think it's good in any sense. But the military, at least the military hardware that the United States has sent over to Egypt for 40 years at this point, was to the military. I mean, it's not like we were sending small arms to different folks. Those the people that were arming themselves with small arms and committing acts of terrorism in the Middle East have been getting that stuff from Russia. So the U.S. role in this, I mean, I don't think that our hands are clean for any amount. I mean, we've got folks that are using American-made weapons to kill American troops, and that's just sort of how it's been over there for years and years and years, and that should make everybody kind of throw open their mouth a little bit. But the problem that I see from this particular relationship with Egypt that we have is the United States has worked itself into a situation, and once again, this isn't the current president's issue. This is just how it's been for the last several decades. Is we are tasked with the very untenable situation of propping up whichever government takes power in that country, because Egypt is too important a player in the Middle East for us to lose to chaos like this. Egypt, Turkey, Israel. Yes, some combination of those three countries is 1, 2, and 3 in the Middle East as far as our interests are concerned. And those are the three countries that have the biggest economies and the biggest populations, the people that we can deal with the best. Absolutely. And so to lose Egypt to chaos like this is a gigantic problem, and we're always kind of stuck.
Do you think we should be, at this time, there's some people that have been calling for, no-fly zone, and then, on the left, you have people going to no-fly zones work. We need to call on and you have hawks on the right say we need to send troops.
Into Egypt?
Yeah.
For what reason?
Do you think we need to send troops in there? I don't know.
No.
I'm just asking you. No? Well,
no.
Apparently, according to this, and I'm going to look this up later, President Obama is sending hundreds of American troops to Egypt under the guise, and maybe it's true, under having joint military exercises. So I'm going to look that up, make sure that's true. But I'm going to tell you, if we're going to actually send boots on the ground to Egypt, that's one of the worst things we could do over there. Lefty and I agree. We need to stay out of Syria. And I think we're both going to agree we need to stay out of Egypt.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. So we're going to be back right after this break. Thanks for tuning in to Doc and Lefty. When we get back, we're going to address one of the key problems in foreign diplomacy, which is gun trade, and how the UN has a big giant gun grab on planned for everybody. Now, Lefty thinks it's conspiracy theory. I tell him if they actually start doing it, it's no longer a theory, it's an actual conspiracy. We'll be back right after the break. You listen to us every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We've been talking about the recent developments in Egypt, and this is such a fast sort of moving story, but I think that we're going to move on to the next thing we wanted to talk about. And I know that that my good friend, Dr. I don't know what to even call you, Dr. Mysterio, is going to kind of get into the latest tales of the Illuminati from the UN. So, Doc, what's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that's a typical liberal lefty approach, which is to marginalize anybody that has a thought different than them. Lefty generally doesn't do that, but in this case, if the shoe fits, throw it.
I will ad hominem attack until you stop talking. I am not above that, sir.
All right. Well, the problem is we've talked about this on the show before. The UN has this measure outlawing gun trades across nations, and there's several regulations you're going to have to follow. There's a couple of problems with the actual bill itself. And one is in this treaty, which is what America would have to sign. In this treaty, it says that this bill supersedes all other what do you call it? It's not constitutions. All other it's supreme law of the land, basically. Great way for my brain to short out on a moment's notice, right? The problem is the Constitution says there is no law, no treaty, nothing above the Constitution. And what this bill essentially does is it makes you document everybody who has a gun. If you read the history of despots and dictators, there's a certain way they do things. First thing they do is they register all the guns. Second thing they do is they make it illegal for those they don't want to have them to have them. And then the third thing that they do is then they say, well, really, since everybody's dangerous, we're just going to take them from everyone in the name of peace. The second thing is control the healthcare system. And the third thing is poison the minds of the children. Part of what the UN is doing is every time that a country has signed on to this, like Australia, the people there suddenly find themselves not able to own a gun for a variety of reasons. Ukraine signed on to it, and they're a major arms exporter. I'm not sure about the Russians, but the problem is we export weapons everywhere. I mean, we're exporting tanks and F-16s. So apparently it's okay to send them overseas because it benefits giant corporations and American interests, right? But if you get a small ammo manufacturer that suddenly has to face all these burdens, that's really what you're talking about. Trying to eliminate small arms from citizens. When you limit the ability of the people to fight back against tyranny, what you get is more tyranny. If you get on YouTube and you can just look up, Syrian fighters, you have these tanks rolling through town, provided by the Russians because they're obviously Russian tanks, rolling through town taking over vast swaths of area and territory. It's impossible to fight back against them because you're not the one getting the F-16s and the anti-tank rockets, and all they have is small arms. That's all they have. And if you make it so that these people can no longer defend themselves or fight against tyranny, what you get is more tyranny. I'm a firm believer in that the UN is not necessarily wanting to generate a one world order, but like every bureaucracy out there, it seeks to continue to feed itself so it can grow ever larger and ever more powerful to sustain its own organism. The part of the problem is there's something called the normalcy bias. So when you start talking about, well, hold on, these bad things can really happen. What happens is people go, well, that's just beyond the realm of anything that would be normal. I can't handle it. So I'm going to say, well, geez, you're crazy. And it's not going to happen. The problem really is that America cannot afford to have the UN meddling in any treaty that limits our ability to fight against tyranny. Now, the House passed the Senate, and I don't think it's got enough votes to pass the Senate to be ratified. But the problem is you have Hillary Clinton who wants to sign it, and you have Barack Obama who said he will sign it. And apparently this is going to happen in August. Now, a couple of years ago, the same situation occurred, and then he wound up not signing it. So, but that's where we are with the UN gun grab. Now, I stopped by and talked to our friend Mike Sporer. Mm-hmm. He said he was going to call on a show and give his opinion on it because he really is an expert in this. So hopefully he'll be joining us here in a second or two.
Well, before he does, I just want to kind of jump in and say it's fantastic how against tyranny you are, and it would be one thing, I suppose, if any of the scenarios that you laid out had anything to do with the UN treaty itself. Aside from the operation of the treaty, which has nothing to do with domestic trade in arms or sort of domestic anything as far as guns are concerned. So what I find just kind of frustrating about this whole particular argument, number one, in the very language of the treaty, it says that this treaty has no effect over member states and signatories' internal domestic regulation of firearms. Has nothing to do, as it won't affect in any way a member state's right to bear arms or to extend arms to the citizens. In fact, the exclusive right of states to regulate internal transfers of arms and national ownership, including through constitutional protections on private ownership, shall not be infringed. That's from the treaty itself. This is a treaty to regulate the international trade of small arms and conventional weapons to conflict zones, basically. They don't want these weapons being dumped into these conflict zones the way they've been doing for the last 100 years. So it has nothing to do with that. The treaty itself isn't, there's no process or a mechanism in the treaty to take anybody's guns away. There's no confiscation mechanism at all. And so to conflate that with the idea that your AK-47 or a more American weapon, I suppose, the M16, is going to in any way defend yourself in a situation where tanks are rolling through the streets of Des Moines, frankly, I don't understand the logic of that particular position, because we are far and away removed from the time and place where a few helter-skelter, rough-and-ready Minutemen could pop up with the same level of firearm technology that the British invaders had and kill them and stand on equal footing toe-to-toe to them. Folks that are stockpiling bullets and weapons right now in their bunkers all around the country, and the preppers and all those folks who are imagining a doomsday that's never going to happen, are kidding themselves if they think that they'll be able to take on the unified, collected might of the United States government. I mean, I don't think there's any really, and the same folks that are these are the same folks that, probably had the yellow support our troops stickers. So if the government is, I'm just going to finish this point. If the government was going to turn its troops on those citizens, you'd have a very interesting situation where military supporting citizens would have to, what? Are you saying that we'd be gunning down our own soldiers? It doesn't. Your argument doesn't make a lot of sense.
We're going to be back right after break, and that was a beautiful display of normalcy bias by Lefty. Thanks for tuning in to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. We'll be back right after the break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around in this second segment of the Doc and Lefty program. I want to thank all of our sponsors that make this show possible and all the sponsors that make this beautiful studio and our fantastic and professional producer possible. Doc, I know that we've got a couple of sponsors of the show. If you want to give them a quick shout before we get back into arguing about why I'm right and you're wrong.
Polk County GOP that fights on a local basis to protect our rights to have guns, oh my God, I can't speak. Guns, God, and glory. I mean, I thought that through on the break. Oh my God. Anyway, Polk County GOP, they're having a feed this July 13th for Bill Northey. That'll be pretty good time. And of course, Des Moines Anesthesia, who have 2 offices. And of course, you can call them and set up an appointment if you have pain management. Now, one of the things I want to take issue with is in the last segment, Lefty quoted directly from, I think, the UN spokesperson. The problem is there's the exact opposite kind of quote from people that observe what we do here in the U.S. And the problem with, particularly in the U.S., is our manufacturers that produce weapons, that produce guns and produce ammunition, also have grants and are permitted to sell weapons overseas and munitions there. The way this bill is worded, you have to file all the paperwork and everything else in order to be able to sell even to your own people, because you're also selling overseas. It's one of those things that, if you have to read the bill and then go, well, hold on, you have 2 different sections that are kind of in conflict. This is oftentimes what the problem with the bill is. The second thing is it also sets up a monopoly for the very despots that are in power. They're the ones that get to determine who gets the guns when they come in.
But this prevents the guns from coming in the first place. That's the whole point.
Well, but it really, smuggling is smuggling. The people in Syria.
This isn't smuggling. This is governments sending it weapons.
Yes. And the Russians are sending guns to the Syrians. The problem is, where are the Syrian rebels getting their guns? They're using the exact same guns. They're
getting it from us now.
Are they stealing them from stockpiles? Yeah, we shouldn't be sending guns over there. Anyway, that's a separate show that we've done a couple of times. But the bottom line is, these people are the rebels that are fighting against tyranny are in the streets trying to arm themselves. Where are they going to get those guns? If they have to go to Assad's regime and say, hey, listen, we want to fight against you. Can you give us some guns? He's going to say no. So what this is going to do is set up even more smuggling as it goes on. I mean, let's face it. The biggest arms smugglers in the whole world is the Chinese secret police, the CIA, and the former KGB. These are the people that really do a lot of the smuggling. So the bottom line is adding this layer of regulation from a global body is not going to help this problem at all. The Russians are experts at filing the correct paperwork to do their illegal activities and not get caught. They're experts at that. That's why we had such a quick takeover when the wall fell with the Russian mob coming in here because we have hardly any paperwork. Well, the problem is now you're giving all this power and consolidating it into a global organization. And the problem is bureaucratic creep. You give a bureaucrat a little bit of power, he's going to figure out a way to wedge that power a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until finally you're like, well, hold on. How did this happen? Morsi's kind of I think he's an idiot, just to draw back to Egypt. If he'd have done this much slower, much more incrementally, just a little bit at a time, he could have gone 5 years and at the end gone, holy cow, we're in an Islamist state. But he did it so rapidly. It was a shock to their system. It's the same thing going on here. It's just a little bit at a time.
My issue with that line of thinking is that it sounds a lot like the same person who says, well, we can't, our DUI laws can't catch every drunk driver, so we might as well get rid of the whole thing. I mean, we have a problem, and in our political system that we have set up, and by our, I mean the world body politic as a whole, the only system that we have set up are agreements through government and political bodies to kind of curtail this sort of activity. That's the only way to effectively resolve it without one country going around and stomping and invading on everybody else and setting up a one world order, which the conservatives hate anyway. And so to suggest that we should throw the whole thing out because it's not going to catch 100% of the people, this is the same issue. This is the same exact kind of argument that Republicans are leveling against the Senate immigration bill. If we can't keep 100% of the people out, we shouldn't keep 50%. We might as well just scrap the whole thing and start over. It doesn't make any sense because that's not how legislation works. That's not how treaties work. That's not how these things get done.
Well, but it says right here under general implementation on Article 5, and this is kind of one of those gotcha things. We try not to do that to each other, but this is a gotcha, and I freely admit it. Each state party is encouraged to apply the provisions of this treaty to the broadest range of conventional arms. In other words, get everybody you can.
No, that's not what that means.
The broadest range of conventional arms, that means as many arms as you can get. National definitions of any of the categories covered under Article 2 shall not cover less than the descriptions used in the United Nations Register of Conventional Arms at the time of entry into force of this treaty. In other words, the UN has their set of what they consider conventional arms, and if your country doesn't describe them the same way, then you have to meet their definition.
You have to meet their floor. They're giving you a floor, not a ceiling.
That's fine. It's a floor. That's my point. You and I agree. That's just where they're going to start. We get back to the normalcy bias. For the category covered under Article 2, national definitions shall not cover less than the descriptions used in relevant UN things. And that's a paraphrase right at the end. Each state party, this is the next, this is number paragraph 4. Each state party pursuant to its national laws shall provide its national control list to the Secretariat, which shall make it available to other states' parties. States' parties are encouraged to make their control list publicly available. Right? So now we have to go out, get a list of all of our manufacturers, get a list of...
No, we don't.
That's
not what it said. Listen, read it again. It says each signatory pursuant to its national laws. That's the first clause of that statute. If there are no national laws providing a control list or a list of manufacturers, if we don't have a law in this country that already has that sort of a registry, and I don't mean to use a buzzword, but a list of manufacturers set up as a control, quote unquote, a control list, then we don't have to provide one because it's pursuant to our national laws. That's the whole point. The treaty itself governs international trade. It has nothing to do with the internal regulation and legislation of firearms. That's the whole issue.
But don't you think that making it in our treaty so that we have to provide to the Secretariat.
We don't have to provide it. That's what it says. No, pursuant to our national laws,
now we have to, so let's say we have a list of these things. Now we have to provide it to the Secretariat. Okay. The next step is then to say, well, now that you're already providing this, these are the ones that you need to start restricting. And then
where does it say that though?
It doesn't, but this is the next step.
So
this goes back to the discussion we had about Germany. They started out with, it wasn't Chamberlain. Oh my God. Who's the chancellor of Germany before Hitler? The president.
Oh, I don't remember.
But he came out and said, well, hold on, we're going to start restricting some guns because he wanted to eliminate the Nazis. Well, it was the very next step that suddenly Hitler did what despots do. We're going to eliminate the people who we don't have guns because we're a free society. But if you're not a citizen, you're not going to have it. Then we're going to find what citizenship is.
The UN isn't a
now we have
despotic
to be,
regime, though.
We'll be back right after the break to continue this discussion about globalization of our arms control. You're listening to us on webcast1live.com every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
Troche & Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche & Associates.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here for the last segment of the show. We're talking about the UN Arms Treaty and whether or not the Republicans will keep us from joining the rest of the industrialized world. Doc, if you would, please.
Well, I certainly hope they do prevent us from joining the rest of the not very civilized world. And I'm glad that we have somebody out there protecting our rights and our freedoms. That is absolutely true. Now, just going through the rest of this, the way that they have things worded is so broad that you can interpret it however you want it. They're talking about, if there's a problem going on, you're not allowed to send arms. Well, here's the problem. If you're sitting here and fighting against a despot, right, like against Assad or against Morsi, as the case, or the guy from Libya, Gaddafi,
mm-hmm.
If you're fighting against him and he's a despot, then what are the people that are normal, that are being brutalized, that are being gassed like the Kurds? What are they supposed to do? Simply take it?
How does that have anything to do with our Second Amendment, though? That's the whole issue. Like, I thought you can't conflate it that way. I thought that your objection to this was that it was a gun grab that will affect Americans' rights, not Syrians and Kurds' rights.
Well, but what do you think they're going to do with it next? They're setting up the framework to sit there and start telling other countries, well, geez, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that in order to be able to comply with this treaty. And it'll be a slow erosion over time. I'm not saying that passing this bill immediately will suspend our rights. What I'm saying is this is the first step in America to eliminating our rights. It's bad enough that we have lefties here at home trying to remove my right to carry a concealed weapon. It's bad enough that I'm not allowed in some states to defend my home or my property. It's bad. That's bad enough. But now we have this global network. It's called the UN that has failed miserably in a lot of different ways. Now saying, well, we're not going to allow certain countries to aid or support revolutions. This is how we've done it throughout history.
Once again, that's not what the treaty says. The treaty regulates the international trade of conventional arms. What's been happening has been the sort of the free flow of weapons and the participation of states in just sort of willy-nilly in an uncontrolled way, tossing conventional arms around the world. And all those conventional arms wind up into the hands of people in conflict zones. That's what the treaty is trying to regulate. This whole issue of we can't do one thing because maybe somehow, some way we might possibly get a national gun registry that'll turn us into Nazi Germany. I mean, first of all, the UN isn't a dictatorship. It's not run by one person. It's a bunch of member states that argue and send diplomats and things. It's about the most democratic body in the world at this point. And number two, if you think for 1 minute that anybody in this country is going to allow the Senate to ratify an amendment down the road, because that's what would have to happen. The president would have to sign off an amendment to the treaty, and the Senate would have to ratify it to ratify an amendment to this treaty that says, you know what, America, thanks for playing. Now we're going to take all your guns. That's a fantasy. That's never going to happen. And it's not even throwing around things like normalcy bias and the fact that I'm just clueless. That's laughable, because the logic of your argument would tend to suggest that is impossible, that we're not going to stand for that kind of stuff. And so also, if this treaty can't go against the Constitution and it has to be read to be in compliance with the Constitution, and it basically just sort of attaches the Constitution the way any normal legislation would, then enforcement of the treaty on a U.S. citizen would have to be in compliance with the Constitution, and the way that the Second Amendment's been interpreted by the Supreme Court is going to get shot down every time. And so I don't see, once again, you haven't convinced me that we're on a slow road to a gun grab here.
Well, but see, and we get back, the problem is your view on guns is pretty solid. You know, you have your view, and I respect that. The problem is right here under the amendment, 6 years after the entry into force of this treaty, any state party may propose an amendment to this treaty. Mm-hmm. We already know that the people that don't like us set us up over and over and over to look like idiots in the UN. All you need is somebody from, like Hugo Chavez to say, well, we're going to amend it so that, no citizen is allowed to have a gun in these member countries. It's just that simple.
That's not going to happen.
But watch. But you don't know. You can't predict the future.
But you don't know that it will. I have a pretty good idea that it will. If we can't pass any law because we're afraid that law might be amended in a way we don't like sometime in the future, then we shouldn't have any laws, and we should elect you, or maybe you should just become king of the state, and we would send alms and tithes to your place.
Would you? Would you put me up for that? I'm willing to run for that position.
I probably would, but that's only because
that
I want to be someplace. I want to have some sort of like cherry cabinet position.
Yeah. Okay. You're good on that.
Okay. Thanks.
One of the things that happens is, and this is discussed all the time with the bills we establish here, the law of unintended consequences. The other thing is at some point, if you have all these new rules, laws, and regulations, you're going to be a criminal no matter what you do. When we've talked before about status. Criminals,
Yeah.
And so, those are the problems with the laws and the rules that you have. Now I think we've had a pretty good debate so far. Wrapping up the end of our show. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Des Moines Anesthesia, Polk County GOP, Bertrosian Associates, Lubinas Law Firm. Hopefully we'll be getting some people coming in to support us here either later this week or early next week. Now you're going to be blowing on a harmonica and doing some other stuff later.
Yeah,
this
I've
week?
got a couple of gigs this week. I'm playing at the Saints Pub and Patio in West Des Moines. That's on a corner of 50th and EP True over there, and from 6 to 9 on Thursday. That's July 11th. It also happens to be my mom's birthday, so happy early birthday,
Mom.
So you should come out. It's my favorite patio in the entire metro. It's the best. The people there are the best. I got a good buddy that runs that bar, and you should come out and grab a cocktail for happy hour and listen to some tunes. I'm also playing at the Ducktail Lounge in Clive, and that's a late night show, 9 until the cows come home on Saturday, July 13th. Then I got another gig at the end of the month. On July 25th, I'll be at the Saints Pub in Beaverdale, and it'll be the first time I ever played there, and that should be a good time as well. So the Blake solo tour has kicked off in July, and hopefully we got a lot more shows to talk about in the upcoming weeks.
All right. Now, thanks to everybody for tuning in. We're going to be on YouTube here in about an hour, and we want to thank you for our support. We've been growing quite a bit and doing quite well. We'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Get over here. Love both of them.